Generosity is the most natural outward expression of an inner attitude of compassion and loving kindness, says the Dalai Lama. These are beautiful words, aren't they? Yet, how do we open our hearts further to inspire and grow that inner expression of compassion and loving kindness so that we can all become more generous beings? We know that generosity makes us feel good and that it's also good for our health. But how do we actually transform ourselves little by little into more generous beings, especially when we fear having enough and scarcity thinking is embedded in so many of us? That beautiful video, Ripple, during our Time for All Ages earlier showed how generosity is transformative both for the giver and the receiver. And the child that received that birthday cake from a mystery person was then able to pass that goodness onto others in need. And actually modeling generosity is one of the most important things that we do for each other in this community. You did it just a moment ago when we donated to the National Heritage Marine National Heritage Sanctuary, something like that, right, Clint? By practicing generosity in this fellowship, whether it's through financial gifts, time given, talents shared, or care offered, we inspire our beautiful children and one another to be more generous in this world. And growing generosity of spirit, heart, means, and resources lives perfectly into our mission statement up there on the wall as a congregation of transforming the world through justice and compassion. And it's also foundational to our personal and spiritual growth and the healing of the world. Now, generosity has long been a core value of Unitarian Universalism, and in fact, it's an essential facet of our UU identity. Our faith calls us to build a more just, equitable, inclusive, and loving world, and generosity fuels this mission. Generosity not only allows us to support our congregations and fund our ministries, but it encourages us to live our values out in the world and serve those in need. Now, of course, generosity, my friends, is not just about giving money. It's about realizing that we've been entrusted with these beautiful lives for a brief time in which we can grow love and hope by expressing gratitude for that gift of life. Generosity reflects the universal principle of interdependence, and some of us have more resources or more time or more talents in certain areas, so we have the privilege of being able to share these gifts with one another and our interdependent world, and it is a privilege. I remember when I first attended my very first Unitarian Universalist congregation in Santa Barbara, I was blown away to find out that everything that existed there came because of the generosity of members. No overseeing body had built the beautiful church or helped maintain or grow it. And indeed, everything that exists here at Chalice, from this beautiful sanctuary to our fellowship hall next door, to all our programs and our staff, are here because of your generosity, your intention, and your care. Not just your abundant financial generosity, which we're so deeply grateful for, but also because of your amazing gifts of time and talent. I look at every single one of you here, and you contribute your generosity in some way to this fellowship. And every week I'm awestruck by all the ideas, the time, and service that you offer this congregation and the wider world. This community is a living embodiment of generosity. And I'm so glad that our wider faith movement is now recognizing generosity as one of the 7 core values that takes Unitarian Universalism into the future. But generosity goes beyond the mere act of giving treasure, time, and talent. It's actually a fundamental spiritual practice. It encompasses giving of ourselves, our presence, and that's not with a T, that's with a C, our hearts, our humanity, our vulnerability, our service, and our compassion. And when we practice generosity, we're connecting with our deepest values and allowing those values to manifest that love through our actions. And we're also increasing our capacity for joy, for fulfillment, and leading a meaningful life. As the Buddha is claimed to have said, the wise do not give because they expect to receive. They give because it is a joy to give. In fact, Buddhism sees generosity as its starting point. Apparently, the first sermon the Buddha ever gave was on generosity. In many spiritual traditions, generosity is seen as a way to connect with the divine and serve God's mission on earth. I remember attending the Parliament of World Religions a few years ago, where the Sikhs were feeding 10,000 people free lunch every day with hearts filled with grace and kindness. And they do this seva all over the world as an act of selfless service with no expectation of reward. And generosity is also one of the 5 pillars of Islam, known as zakat. Helping the poor is said to purify the heart. So generosity enables our personal spiritual growth. When we give of ourselves, we open our hearts and minds to new experiences, new perspectives, and new ways of seeing the world. We walk in another's shoes. We learn to trust in the abundance of the universe. And we begin to believe that we have enough to share with others and that we will be taken care of, reversing a fear-based scarcity mentality. So generosity is a transformative journey that fosters our spiritual growth and well-being. And as it says in the Bible in Proverbs 11:25, a generous person will prosper. Whoever refreshes others will be refreshed. And gratitude, as someone mentioned earlier, is another essential component of the spiritual practice of generosity. By being grateful for each new day, for each sunrise and sunset, and for the many little moments that are gifts in our lives, we remember what a privilege it is simply to be alive, right? Recognizing this precious gift of life inspires us to give thanks and to give back to the world. And like many things, many good things, generosity also possesses an incredible power. It's contagious in a good way. When we act generously, we inspire others to follow suit. I know that I've been motivated by your continuous modeling of generosity, whether we're giving to a special collection like we did today with an overflowing plate, or we are helping Chalice continue to operate and grow through our shared collection, pledges, and fundraisers, or whether we're serving on committees or contributing to a meal train or helping educate our children. When we're advocating for the rights of LGBTQIA folk, or working to create beloved community, or participating in some form of social action, our community is filled with daily expressions and opportunities for generosity that inspire us all to be more generous. In fact, just today, someone walked into our doors, I hope you don't mind me saying this, Cliff, and said, I'm here because I have skills in IT and I want to share them with the church. I mean, you are a living embodiment of generosity. Thank you. Thank you. That's just a living example right there of generosity. And just this week, I met with our pastoral care team who regularly check in on the needs of our fellowship and care with a listening ear. And you may not be aware, but they all go out to visit people who are shut in or lonely or sick. Their kindness is boundless. And others among us gather in our kitchen once a month to make and serve food for the local unhoused population. And it's an opportunity to cook together and to enjoy fellowship and share our abundance with those in need. And these meals make a huge difference in our local community. And I've heard from those of you who participate in that it fills your hearts with joy to cook and serve those meals, right, Marcy? So you are living into the wise words of Mahatma Gandhi, who said, the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. Over the past few years alone, this congregation has participated in so many acts of service and generosity to the wider community. During COVID, we served food to hundreds of hospital workers in the early days of the pandemic to thank them for their selfless service. And we collected supplies and presents for field workers who worked tirelessly planting and harvesting our food so that they would be able to treat their families during the holidays. And we've collected and distributed school supplies for children in need. And we've advocated and marched for racial justice again and again, which is so important in this world. And our children build care kits monthly for the unhoused through our Families Care program each month so that we can hand out vital supplies to people we see struggling on the streets. And if you want some of those care kits, they're right out there in our foyer when you leave today. This congregation is constantly touching people's lives through service and advocacy. I haven't even mentioned everything we do, but everything we do creates ripples of good in this area, in this community, and on our planet. So I thank you. Speaking of ripples, a friend shared with me just this week how she always gives 2 pairs of socks to homeless folk. So they always have 1 pair to wear and another to wash. But more often than not, she notices that these generous people end up giving one of the pairs to someone else in need. Sometimes those who have the least among us give the most. They're a living example of John Bunyan's words, "You have not lived today until you have done something for someone who can never repay you." And doing anonymous acts of service and generosity for others deepens our spiritual practice of generosity. Not needing or seeking recognition for one's generosity is a deeply spiritual act. And those ripples of anonymous kindness can extend far and wide, creating a culture of giving that benefits everyone it touches. When Jessica Heslop of Fayetteville, Arkansas, built a small box in front of her home and filled it with food and necessities, she offered another example of generosity's contagious nature. And she called it a little free pantry. And the concept was simple: take what you need and leave what you can. And this act of generosity inspired countless others. And today, these little free pantries can be found worldwide, providing food and essentials to those in need. So what began as a single act of kindness has transformed into a global movement, as has the little free libraries that we see pop up in our neighborhoods around us. Do any of you have those little free libraries that you've seen? Yes. Where people can take books they want to read from these small book cubbies and add in those that they want to share. It makes me wonder what act of contagious generosity some among us here might be inspired to start. My friends, we live in a 21st century world facing unprecedented challenges that really needs our generosity. Climate change threatens our environment. Wars and violence are rampant. Poverty persists as an enduring crisis, and inequality remains a stark reality. And in the face of these challenges, generosity emerges as an essential force for creating a better future for all. Generosity brings hope when times can feel hopeless. To combat our climate crisis, we're called to invest our resources generously, like we did in our offering earlier today, but also in clean energy and regenerative practices and sustainable technologies. And generosity encourages us to support communities already impacted by climate change and work towards a more environmentally conscious and responsible future. Generosity helps us care for our beautiful earth. And to help heal war-torn areas and the pervasive violence in our society, generosity calls us to care for those harmed by trauma and destruction. And generosity calls us to find non-violent solutions to the world's problems and improve mental health care for the many that have been impacted. And to deal with rampant poverty, generosity asks us to provide basic necessities such as food, shelter, and health care for all those in need. And generosity fuels programs and policies that help people break free from the cycle of poverty, fostering independence and self-sufficiency. And to address societal inequity, generosity supports educational opportunities for all children, regardless of their background and circumstances. And generosity advocates for policies that promote economic and racial justice, striving for a more inclusive and equitable society. Now, I know these challenges can seem overwhelming, but through the lens of generosity, we actually generate hope, and we find a way to contribute and make a difference. Generosity is not just a response to these issues, it's actually a catalyst for change and transformation. It allows us to address these challenges one act of kindness and generosity at a time and make a real difference. So as we continue to navigate these turbulent times, I invite us to keep using generosity as a compass, as a guiding light that guides us towards a brighter future. Let it provide a beacon of hope and a call to action, inviting us to step forward and transform our world and to help fill your life with more meaning and purpose. Generosity is essential to our mission and vision as Unitarian Universalists, and it's not just a value that we uphold, it's a way of life, a practice to help us work towards a more united, sustainable, and equitable world. And in this 21st century, we need that more than anything. Now, of course, generosity is already intricately woven into the fabric of our Unitarian Universalist 7 principles. It aligns with every single one of our principles, but it's particularly evident in the principles of justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, in the call for acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth, in the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all, and in the principle of the interconnected web of all existence. Generosity drives us to take action and make a difference in the lives of others, ensuring that justice and compassion prevail. And it asks us to be generous in our thinking towards others, to be open-minded and inclusive and welcoming, ever widening our circles of concern. And it also calls us to keep working on opening our hearts and strive for a loving world for all, in which everyone matters. What affects one of us impacts us all. So generosity asks us to remember our interconnectedness, our interdependence, and embracing the shared journey of existence fact, Buddhist teacher Sharon Salzberg says that if we cultivate generosity, the mind will stop sticking to things. It's as if we've made a tight fist that is slowly opening, and our world opens up because we can let go. So as we evolve now as a faith from our 7 principles as a guiding document towards our new explicit values and covenants, Unitarian Universalism is recognizing the need for generosity as a clearly stated value. And the new version of this Article 2 of our UU bylaws, principles and purposes will be voted on in June 2024 at our General Assembly. And the draft form was ratified at this year's General Assembly, and the revised wording was just released this week. So it's very exciting, hot off the press here for you all. It identifies ways in which we as UUs can clearly live out our vision of love and action through a set of values and covenants that seem vital to our 21st century world. And these values and covenants are actually forward-looking. They're not necessarily a definitive statement of who we are as UUs now or historically, but rather their purpose is to call into question the qualities that are most needed from us as a spiritual movement in the 21st century. So I'm very excited to share that we are going to share these values and covenants with you here, and you get a chance to read them out together. And this is the proposed language in no order of preference. And these values are reflected. Do we have the graphic of the beautiful flower? Yes. These values are reflected in this beautiful flower graphic. And as you can see, suddenly, are centered around love. So join me now. Not sure what's going on here. Why we're no, let me see if I unmute if it's better. No, I don't know why. It's okay? No, I still hear the echo coming out. Anyway, Grant, if you would please put the first slide up so that we can all join in speaking. No, it's doing the same thing. Is it? Okay. So please join me in speaking the language of our new values and covenants. As Unitarian Universalists, we covenant congregation to congregation and through our association to support and assist one another in our ministries. We draw from our heritages of freedom, reason, hope, and courage, building on the foundation of love. And here's our first value. Love is the power that holds us together and is at the center of our shared values. We are accountable to one another for doing the work of living our shared values through the spiritual discipline of love. Inseparable from one another, these shared values are interdependence. We honor the interdependent web of all existence. With reverence for the great web of life and with humility, we acknowledge our place in it. We covenant to protect Earth and all beings from exploitation. We will create and nurture sustainable relationships of care and respect, mutuality and justice. We will work to repair harm and damaged relationships. Pluralism. We celebrate that we are all sacred beings, diverse in culture, experience, and theology. We covenant to learn from one another in our free and responsible search for truth and meaning. We embrace our differences and commonalities with love, curiosity, and respect. Justice. We work to be diverse, multicultural, beloved communities where all thrive. We covenant to dismantle racism and all forms of systemic oppression. We support the use of inclusive democratic processes to make decisions within our congregations, our association, and society at large. Equity. We declare that every person has the right to flourish with inherent worth, dignity, and worthiness. We covenant to use our time, wisdom, attention, and money to build and sustain fully accessible and inclusive communities. Transformation. We adapt to the changing world. We covenant to collectively transform and grow spiritually and ethically. Openness to change is fundamental to our Unitarian and Universalist heritages, never complete and never perfect. And finally, generosity. We cultivate a spirit of gratitude and hope. We covenant to freely and compassionately share our faith, presence, and resources. Our generosity connects us to one another in relationships of interdependence and mutuality. My friends, these values call us into being the best versions of ourselves and communities. They're inspiring and aspirational and offer us clear direction for how to live into them, all centered around love. Yes, just checking if you're still awake. And in fact, we have bookmarks for all of you with the new values. If you'd like one when you exit our sanctuary, Claudia and I will be having them, holding them in the basket, so come and out that way and we can give you each one. But returning to generosity for a moment, do you hear the call for cultivating a spirit of gratitude and hope? Yes. To share our faith, our presence, and our resources? Yes. To remember that we are interconnected and interdependent? Yes. And we're going to be exploring all these aspects of generosity throughout worship this month and in our small groups. So, my friends, I invite you to join me in a challenge. I've decided that every day this month, I want to do something consciously generous. Whether it's saying something kind to someone, doing an act of service for another, giving to a cause close to my heart, or helping someone in need, whatever it might be. And I'd love for you to join me in this. Now, you might wish to start each day with gratitude for at least one thing that's good in your life, and then offer hope through your generosity to the world. A small act of kindness or generosity of the heart and spirit is all it takes. And then I invite us to share stories with one another about what we've learned about generosity. Perhaps post them on social media if you're that kind of person, to inspire us all, so we can inspire a wave of generosity in this community and beyond. Are you game to practice this you value with me? Yes. How about even more emphatically than I just heard? Are you game to practice this important value of generosity? Yes. I'm so glad. So I close with the words of UU Minister Reverend Don Eaton. The religious person is the grateful person, and the grateful person is the generous person. My beloveds, may we be grateful for all the good in our lives and use it to inspire our generosity. May we open our hearts to express our innate kindness and compassion through generosity. And may generosity unfold in a multitude of ways to bring more love, more hope, more joy, and more peace to this planet. May it be so.